I hope all of you have had just as good of a Christmas as I have. It's been fantastic. I am, of course, recording this on Christmas Day. I won't be uploading it until next week. I believe on the 31st or on the 1st. I haven't really decided yet, but I was spending some time today thinking about like what I want to do going forward, and I do think it's time like I do need to give some updates on like what's going on and like the current state of the channel and stuff like that, and some of the things that have been going on behind the scenes and kind of my views on certain things. I need to make real commitments because I do think that's like the big thing that I've been really not capable of doing over the past couple of years is just being involved in major situations and addressing it because there have been lots of controversies and scenes and new communities cropping up over the past couple of years that I ostensibly should have been part of, right? I really should have become a Ricada detractor. I really should have been anti-sector. I really should have like, come out against like the censor shitters, the Nintendo, Rainfall 2, second Rainfall, they're calling themselves now. I really should have called out all of that, but I wasn't really able to because of just how hard I was working on my books, on my personal life, and at my real day job, right? It was not really possible for me to keep up with everything that was going on over the past couple of years. Okay, I tried my best, I did, but it does feel as if not only did I not cover these things, I don't really feel a desire to do so. I do think this is the thing that's changed over the past couple of weeks in particular is that like I don't necessarily feel the need to make daily videos on topics because nothing is happening, right? When you really look at like the grander scale of things, when you look at like the community as a whole, like nothing's happened. When you look at gaming, you see a lot of people like trying to deny reality, right? In regards to like Nintendo's place in the console industry and the upcoming Nintendo console and like the success of certain brands, right? People are still to this day unwilling to admit that Nintendo won the console generation. Not just this time, but in the future as well. People don't want to admit that PlayStation and Xbox are in very, very poor positions and will never, ever be able to recover from this. And this has been going on like all gen, but it's getting increasingly pathetic because you are seeing people like straight up bend over backwards, making up narratives about the company, right? Whether it's like pretending Mario and Luigi Brothership bombed or attacking Zelda and Princess Peach for being too woke or like, complaining about games like another Code R or, anything else they did this year. Like, to me, it feels like a declining culture, right? There isn't as much organized hatred towards Nintendo as there used to be. And there's a lot of reasons for that. The 90s kids are growing up. Game journos are becoming increasingly irrelevant, and corporate YouTubers don't have nearly as much influence as they did 10 years ago, right? Nintendo is exploding in popularity, even in these really weird, even when these really weird controversies pop up. Tears the Kingdom, right? Pokemon Scarlet and Violet, two really good examples of games that the internet completely hated and did everything they possibly could to rally against. And what happened? Both of them became phenomenal success stories and will continue to be popular and beloved for all time, right? Like that's the reality of it. These games are huge, huge success stories. And when you compare them to like the games that you're supposed to like, the Baldur's Gate 3s, the Astrobots, the Elden Rings, right? When you look at those games, right, they're just passing fads, right? When you look and see what's happening with those releases, what ends up happening is that people hype them up, they worship them, they call them the greatest thing ever, but they can't match up to Nintendo. They are all one-off things that catch on for very specific reasons and then just kind of fade away. The way it looks now, I don't think we've had like a genuine cultural major thing in gaming since like Skyrim, from the third parties. Skyrim and like that period, immediately afterward. That feels like the last time that PlayStation and Xbox ever had like any real sale, any real win behind their sales. It was the last time they were relevant. Grand Theft Auto 5 did a lot of numbers, but that was to people who don't actually play a lot of games. When you look at like the reality of the situation, whenever people's like try and gaslight you, like, oh no, Genshin Impact is one of the biggest things in gaming. It has like 200 million downloads. I downloaded Genshin Impact. Okay, it's free. I played it for like 5 minutes, realized it was garbage, and uninstalled it. Right? How many people are having that same exact experience? Right? You can't judge a game's quality by its sales, by its Metacritic score, and by its graphics. Okay, like that's the reality of the situation. When you talk about a game and its actual quality, every single time some Nintendo game is going to come out on top. Everyone's talking about Astrobot right now, mogged by a 30-year-old Donkey Kong Country game. Okay, Donkey Kong Country still is better than Astrobot. And that's just one game. When you look at like Nintendo's entire back catalog of games, like not even just in the Donkey Kong series, like, Mario, Yoshi, Wario, like nothing Astrobot does even comes close to that. When people brag about Astrobot, they're just like, oh, look at the particles, like, look at the great level design, when it's just like discount Super 3D Mario, right? No one's going to remember Astrobot by the time the next 3D Mario comes out. And I do think that really needs to be addressed, is that like the games that are being propped up and worshipped cannot sustain the dying industry. And I've been saying this for a long time. I've been very upfront about this. I predicted this years ago, over a decade ago, right? I was talking about how the gaming crash was imminent. But now that it's here, you're seeing people on the opposite end of the spectrum. If Harman Smith is always right, there are people like Review Tech USA who are always wrong, right? You have those guys who are going out saying the exact opposite, saying nothing is wrong and that Nintendo's the one in trouble and that and that Nintendo's going to struggle with the next console. No, not gonna happen. And it's so obviously not going to happen that nobody is really taking these criticisms seriously. When I look at like people like rallying against new Nintendo games, Princess Peach Showtime for being too easy, Echoes the Wisdom for being all those weird things they said about that. Like, remember when they tried to say the puzzles were like trivialized or whatever? Like, when you look at what they try to do with Brothership, like what you're seeing is just a bunch of people flailing around trying to downplay everything Nintendo is doing to prop up PlayStation. And it just isn't gonna work, Like you can already see just how big of a deal Brothership is. You can already see that like people are warming up to like games like Famicom Detective Club and Another Code R and Princess Peach Showtime. Like I've always been a very major advocate for these games, and I'm not the only one. What is happening is that the people who are actually invested in the Nintendo ecosystem and actually look around and experiment and buy games are discovering that Nintendo's catalog is far superior than all of the alternatives, which is what we've been seeing for a long time. But like it's becoming more and more commonly known every day, to the point where something like Pokemon Scarlet and Violet sells 25 million units in spite of like this incredible hate campaign to try and slander the game, right? Like, to me, it feels like it's not possible to stop Nintendo's momentum at this point. There isn't going to be like a repeat of what happened in the 90s where PlayStation came on the scene and started like paying off all these third-party developers. Sega is not going to be able to run their ad campaigns. Nobody's going to take that seriously anymore. The industry has grown past it. Even if there are a bunch of, man children in their parents' basements, like screaming about like how Nintendo has failed them, like nobody's paying attention to it. Nobody believes it. Nobody cares. Those guys are just exposing themselves as being stereotypes, right? If anybody even notices or cares about them at all. And that's kind of where I'm feeling, uh, where I am at the channel right now is that like I feel genuinely as if there's no more enemies for me to fight in this space. Like I've won in regards to the Nintendo thing. So with that being said, there are there was a serious there was I seriously thought like earlier this month like whether it was time to like retire the channel for this reason. And in the end I decided not to because I genuinely like my community. I can talk about whatever I want. I set it up that way. I have audiobooks on the channel. I'm getting more and more subs all the time. I can talk about anything I want and still get like a reasonable audience, right? Recently I've been working hard and trying to like make more edited content. I produced that Shadows of the Damned video a while back. Examining Paula's role in the story. That's kind of what I want to do with the channel going forward. Is more stuff like that where I just talk about like extremely fringe subjects in video games I like. Shadows of the Damned is not mainstream. It's not going to get me a million views. I'm not going to become the next PewDiePie by talking about how like Paula has a silver eye, bro. Like, no, I'm producing the content because I want to do it and I enjoy it. And that's what makes me better than every other YouTuber. It's not about the money. I don't care about the money. I'm doing this because I want to do it. And that's kind of my mindset going forward on this is that like I will continue doing YouTube for now, but not out of the sense that like, I think I'm gonna get rich off of it or because I feel like I'm exposing the pretendos or anything. It's because I genuinely want to do it and like want to build a community and keep expanding my repertoire and like branch out into booktube. I think is the big thing that I really want to. I've been really wanting to do for a long time. Doing more stuff like that, right? Not necessarily like the same thing I've always been doing. Like to me, like I don't see this as there's no point in talking about how Nintendo is better than PlayStation in this industry where anybody who is being completely honest with themselves can tell you that it's true, right? The only people who play PlayStation at this point are just delusional fanboys who just can't bring themselves to face the fact that they backed the wrong console, right? PlayStation lost the console war. Xbox lost the console war. Nintendo won. Okay. And PC isn't going to win either because emulators are getting cracked down on, and without emulators, you don't have jack shit. So, with that being said, what I want to do going forward, uh, what was that other thing I wanted to talk about? Um, hmm, I probably should have taken notes. What was it? Yes, yes, that's right. The other thing that I really, really wanted to focus on and really need to address is that I do need to formally come out and disavow the anti-woke community. I am 100% against them. I'm not on board with anything they say or do. I don't support Grummz. I don't support side scrollers. I don't support the sector. I don't support any of that shit. And one of the things I was really disappointed on in myself over the past couple of years is that I gave a lot of leeway to the anti-woke community. I thought there was a real discussion to be had about corruption in video game journalism and the influence it had on game dev and how that was eventually going to make its way to Japan and screw everything up. And to a certain extent, those concerns were not invalidated, right? It's very much a real issue that we should be talking about. However, more and more, I begin to feel that people like Grummz, people like Raging Golden Eagle, are complete gooners who have no understanding at all as to like what the actual issue is. They don't play good games. They don't talk about good games. They don't understand jack shit. In a lot of ways, they are just as bad or worse than the SJWs they claim to hate. Because, and I see them doing this constantly, they keep accusing Nintendo of doing things that they didn't actually do. And this is the big thing in in regards to my view on the situation. When I see after playing Mario and Luigi Brothership, which none of these people played because they don't play games. After playing Mario and Luigi Brothership and seeing how traditional it was, how it depicted Princess Peach, how it handled its female characters, how it handled its subject matter, how it had this really cool, unique theme, how it really, really made the characters shine. Great game all around, right? Absolutely base 10 out of 10, like conservative core game, right? Would any of these people notice or care about that? Did any of these people notice or care about Xenoblade Chronicles 3? One of the most based and red-pilled games ever made? No. To these people, what they care about is seeing Eve's ass jiggle on the screen. What they care about is Dead or Alive 7 having bigger tits and slimmer bodies, and lower age numbers. These guys are so fixated on this weird hypersexualization of video games that it really feels as if they don't understand what these games actually were. Because a lot of times you see these people try and say that Fire Emblem was a super sexualized game, Xenoblade was super sexualized. No, they weren't. Right? They have this weird fan fiction idea of what these games were, why they were successful, and how they're supposedly falling off. Oh, they've been censored, bro, and yet every single time I look into it or research it or care about it at all or even believe it's true in some instances, it never is. Okay? And not to say that there haven't been weird localization choices in Nintendo games in the past, like the they them toads, what they tried to do with Juniper, with Act, with Kaiza, right? There have been some weird things that have happened in the localization process, but what you have to understand is that everyone who notices, anybody who cares, is just gonna write it off as a mistranslation pushed by activist localizers. So in the end, it doesn't really have an impact on the product at all. Any minor line change, any costume change, it's just going to be seen as not being a big deal by people who actually play and enjoy the game for what it is. And yeah, you could not like what they did with Dragon Quest III HD. I don't like it. But objectively speaking, a lot of people are playing that game and they are enjoying it. People are playing Metaphor ReFantasio. People are playing Guilty Gear Strive. And to me, and I feel this very strongly, I would rather continue playing Japanese games than whatever bullshit that Grummz and his ilk are trying to push onto us, right? I'm so sick of hearing about Nikkei and how Korea is gonna save gaming or how the Chinese are gonna take over. Black Myth Wukong is base, bro. No, it's a cheap knockoff of Souls. Okay, I'm so tired of every single of these people latching onto these stupid nonsense games in order to prop up their weird crusade against censorship. To me, it just seems as if these people have become the game journos of the 2000s, right? Because this in the 2000s we were seeing a lot of similar sentiments, right? We were seeing a lot of this, the early game journos, people who were speaking out against Japanese RPGs, who would hate on them here constantly, be racist towards them, and this is the same kind of thing, right? The Japanese games are going to be better no matter what. It's going to take a long time for Nintendo and its teams to fall apart the way that Blizzard, Activision, Ubisoft, any of those companies have, because they just have so many good people working for them. And there just seems to be this complete lack of understanding of that reality. You keep seeing people say that Nintendo's coasting off its franchises. They don't innovate or do anything new. When they just write off everything new that they do, right? Like it's just like, oh, Nintendo, they couldn't compete without their franchises, but those franchises have become what they were because of their iconic successes on those weaker hard pieces of hardware that you hate so much. Like, oh, Nintendo should go to PC. That would cannibalize their hardware sales. And they on hardware, they make money on all of the games they sell on there, not just the ones they publish. Going to PC would be detrimental to their business. And Nintendo understands this. PlayStation and Xbox would understand this if they weren't completely fucking retarded, right? But we are in this weird situation where Nintendo is by far the best video game developer in the world, right? They're producing the best hardware, they're producing the best software, but all of these guys who advocate themselves as like the real gaming audience, right? They religiously hate them. Always have. They speak out against all their hardware, all their creative decisions, like their legal decisions, in regards to like the Power World thing and stuff like that. And when you really look into it, you begin to realize that Nintendo was in the right every single time. And my entire channel is built on explaining all this to the unwashed masses. But like these people have always coasted by on ignorance and stupidity. Right, just look at Second Rainfall. Right, first of all, like it's a dumb name to begin with because Operation Rainfall was a movement to get games that Nintendo have published out into the West. But like this idea that like Nintendo is censoring like niche Japanese games for being too sexy is laughable. When you can just go on the eShop right now and find things that are more sexually charged than like the stuff they're protesting, right? To me, considering the fact that like it's always the same studio that's getting targeted for this, like it seems like they're deliberately canceling their releases at the last minute to get buzz for their products and to promote themselves. Like Nintendo is censoring our games. Like no, like it really needs to stop. So 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 yeah, like why exactly am I supposed to hate Nintendo? Why exactly am I supposed to believe that woke SJW activists are being involved in the creative process and censoring my games? Like why exactly should I take Grummz seriously? Like someone who's never published a game on a Nintendo console, someone who pretends to be a fan and then turns like doesn't seem to know the basic things about how the company is structured or anything about its teams or its franchises at all, right? Like why would I take this individual who couldn't even save Blizzard seriously? And that's my mindset on this. Gamergate 2 is a wash in the sense where like, everybody involved is a grifter. And unlike the first Gamergate, which had very real poignant points, exposing the general corruption in the industry, it seems like this time around we have grifters on our side, right? Like last time it was like us versus like the man, but now like the Rebel Alliance, us, the gamers, like we're a bit more entrenched now. We're working on games, we're working in the industry, and like it seems like the pendulum is about to switch the other way. And when that happens, what we're gonna see is just the same thing happen. Games are Western games are not going to get better. Nintendo is still going to dominate the industry and nothing's going to change because the fundamental reality of it is that nobody wants to admit why Japanese gaming, specifically Nintendo gaming, is better to begin with. And that's kind of like the core issue when it comes to Gamergate. The issue that nobody talks about is that Nintendo, specifically this company, its hardware and its games were never impacted by these issues at all. And that's been like the grim reality of the past several years, is that so many people have been trying to push this narrative that Nintendo is particularly censorship happy, like that they ruin games, that they're trying to appeal to woke demographics, and it just never came true. And in this day and age where like woke culture is clearly on the on the way out, like it never will be true. What you're gonna see is just a complete and total demolition of the narrative, and the people involved with Second Rainfall, involved with the anti-woke community, they can't bring themselves to face it. They can't bring themselves to admit to the fact that PlayStation and Xbox were always worse than the video game company that they hated and made fun of for all these years, and it's really really grating to them. You know, they really can't bring themselves to face it at all, and it is something that I feel very, very strongly about. Is that I have never seen any of these people like come out and acknowledge over the past 7 years that Nintendo Switch has been producing high quality releases. Every single time, it's this narrative that nothing good is getting produced, that gaming is dead, that the liberals have ruined everything, and that simply isn't true. The best games have always been exclusive to Nintendo hardware. So with that being said, I do need to emphasize my stance on this and go in really hard and like condemning Grummz and Second Rainfall and people in that sphere, right? That's like my big thing that I really, really want to get out there and like emphasize is that like I will not abide by these people any longer. I will not boycott the games that they tell me to boycott. I will be picking up games like Guilty Gear Strive, like Dragon Quest III, like Romancing Saga 2. Like, I don't care. To me, this is the most important thing about our hobby is enjoying good video games. And I simply do not see that happening out of this circle of grifters.